Welcome, goddesses, to our special live stream on using numerology to enhance your intuition and grow your business. We have a very special guest joining us today, Megan Alton. Welcome. So good to have you in the group. I know you've been in the community a few times now, and I always love talking about numerology and just seeing the crossover as well with astrology. And I know you also work in the records. So it's amazing how there's so many beautiful ways that we can explore our energetic blueprint. So you're my go-to girl for numerology. And I love that we're doing this near the beginning of the year too, because I really want to dive into the energy this year as well and how that really relates to enhancing our intuition and growing our business. So for those jumping in, feel free to say hi below so I can officially welcome you. We're open to your questions throughout. So feel free to ask your questions around numerology. And for those who may be new to you, Megan, if you want to introduce yourself, and I know you went from economist to numerologist. So I'm interested in your journey of making that transition if you want to speak to that. So I will hand it over to you.
Absolutely. I know it cracks me up. And the funniest thing about it is it took me really years to understand the linkage between how I spent 6 years in university studying economics, and I worked for the government of Alberta for many years doing economic forecasting. And so what I would do is I would pull all the data and the numbers in the province into these big spreadsheets and use them to predict revenue for how much money the government could spend that year in their budget. And it was a very logical linear process, but I've always loved numbers. They've always spoken to me. And then, I got pregnant with my first daughter, and I had a massive intuitive awakening in my pregnancy. And so I was like, I need to learn, what is this intuition thing? How does it even work? What's the deal? And so I started studying. And when I came across numerology, it just made so much sense to me, right? And it really helped me to understand too why some people have an imbalanced relationship with numbers, because numbers are more than this linear logical piece that we're taught in school. They contain energy. They're actually dynamic, and they have frequency to them, and they have polarity to them. And when you start to understand that, things really kind of click and fall into place.
I love that. And it sounds like you are always meant to work with numbers in some capacity or another. Like they really spoke to you. And do you see that in your unique numerology too? Does our unique, I don't know too much about the different aspects of it. I know we all have our life path, but in studying your unique numerology, do you see that there would be a love for numbers and certain kind of characteristics and traits?
It's interesting. I couldn't necessarily tell if I would see numbers in my chart, but what I do see in my chart is this idea of pushing the boundaries or disrupting the status quo. So people that have a similar chart to mine, they would look at something that has been done a certain way, and they would feel the urge to kind of turn the tables, push the edges. So they can have kind of this rebellious energy, or this well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to figure it out and try and just see. And it might work and it might fail. It's like that pioneer explorer type energy. And so when I see that in people's charts, they'll often come up with a tool or a system, and they'll reinvent a new way to use it, or reinvent a new relationship with it, or perhaps even take multiple modalities and kind of meld them together and create their own new modality out of it, because they cannot follow the rules of the old way of doing things.
I love that. And you know what? That would make sense with your astrology too, as an Aquarius, right?
It does. A bit of a rebellious nature over here.
Yeah, I always say Aquarians are the rebels of the zodiac, the humanitarian, the visionary. And again, it's so neat to see just the crossover, what our numerology is saying, and then how that adds up with our astrology as well. And I also, I just think that's so fascinating, that shift that you went through and how the birth of your daughter sparked that. And I've heard similar stories from other women, after giving pregnancy, really aligning to their soul path in a new way, making those big changes in their career. So I think that's so fascinating.
It's the craziest thing. I can look back at my life, and my Myers-Briggs archetype changed. the way I process energy changes. Like there's so many pieces. I was just talking to a woman before this call, which is why it's on my mind, but she did my Myers-Briggs assessment, and I was telling her in my 20s I was this type and now I'm this type, and she couldn't believe how dramatically different it was. And it's interesting because it was that like activation of my spiritual awakening. But then when I look at the codes, the numerology codes of my children, I can see how, we're given different ways to work with energy. And like, obviously the first one is your code, right? That's your code that you're given. But then you also have soul contracts of different souls that come into your life, whether it's a child, a friend, a partner, a parent, a sibling, like a bestie. And those people come into your life to help you access another layer of coding. And so when I got pregnant with my oldest, her chart is similar to mine in a lot of ways, but even more intense. And so it's almost like that level of intensity in my life just activated things. And it's like, it's really cool to see how that happened.
Oh, it's amazing. And, I see that from like the perspective of the records too, how we have these soul agreements with different people and how it can really change the path that we're on. So that's so beautiful. And yes, a question that's coming through now, like I just have so many questions because I love numerology too. So I know in astrology, there's always so much talk about like our zodiac sign, which is our sun sign or our star sign. And I believe in numerology that would translate to our life path. Like we have a ruling number or a life path number. I believe yours is 7. Did I remember that right? I remember mine is a 5. So we have that. And then do we have like, how does that play out with like different aspects? So I know in astrology, we would have each of the planets in different signs and different houses. So how does that kind of work with numerology? And does that point to like our energetic blueprint or our soul codes?
I'm like, this is why I love talking with you, Kara, because you always ask the juiciest questions. So there are so many places that we can go with this. So in regards to our own birthday, the entire birthday added up is, yes, it's your ruling number or your life path number. Like you said, you're a 5, I'm a 7. Anybody who's on the call, either pop your birthday in the chat and I'll come back later and figure it out for you. Or if you just add all the digits of your birthday up, like day, month, year, you'll end up with a really big number. Mine is like 25. And then you add them up again, and that would give you the final number. And that's where I get 7 from. And the only time you would stop is if you get either the 10 or the 11, right? So that's when those numbers would be complete. So that is like the primary thing to look at, similar to your zodiac sign. But you also look at other aspects. So for example, if you have a double number somewhere in your chart, like let's say you were born on, I don't know, in the month of November, you're going to have 2 1s. And chances are you actually probably have 3 1s, because if you were born in 19 something of November, you have 3 1s in your chart. So that's an added layer of influence. The day you were born, so I was born on the 5th of the month, that is another activation energy. So 5 energy is dominant for me as well, because it's the day I was born. And so what day were you born, Kara?
I was born on the 18th.
Oh, so that's 9, which is so beautiful, because 9 is like that mirror, that reflection, that higher perspective, humanitarian, and like this idea of like, okay, so here's what we've been experiencing, but how do we take it to a higher, more evolved level? That would be the 9 energy in your chart. And that's an energy that's very activating for you.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. And so with my birthday, it's like July 18th. Would this 7 also be significant?
So the 7 shows up in your energy grid. And so we all have an energy grid where all the numbers added up have an influence, but then the grid of energy has an influence as well, where we look at each of the individual digits. So we look at the 7, the 1, the 8, and I'm guessing you're a like 1980s something baby, right?
7, yeah.
Well, then you have double 8s as well, right? Because you've got the 8 from your day, plus you also have the 8 from your year. And so that double 8 influence is also going to point you to a level of mastery, a level of devotion, the place where you're like, I don't want to deal with small talk. I want to talk to people who go deep to the heart of the matter.
Absolutely. Can't do, actually, I shouldn't say I can't do small talk, but I really don't enjoy it.
Right. It's like that thing. It's like what fuels you, what fulfills you versus what like is like, I can do it, but it's not necessarily my favorite. But in advanced numerology, we actually look at planet influence as well. So I don't often talk about this kind of in the entry level numerology because it is quite a bit more complex. But each of us have an influence in each of the planets. And those influences determine, it's kind of like a more in-depth birth chart in numerology, as well as they determine soul contracts. So you can have a contract with someone that lands in, let's say, Venus, and that would mean you have like a beautiful like friendship or beautiful connection of gentleness and softness and collaboration and love and partnership. Or you could have, let's say, a Saturn connection with someone, and that would be speaking more to like being challenged or learning lessons or being triggered into a greater level of your own level of self-development or mastery or what your purpose is, right? And so you can look at, in advance, you can look at all the planets, and the planet meanings are the same as in astrology, but the interpretations would be different because you're looking at the numerology influence.
Oh, I love that. This is so fascinating. So I love the depth that you can get into because I think as humans, we are complex. Like we're not just one-sided. We have these different aspects of ourselves. And it really sounds like numerology helps us understand that more deeply. And I love that connection with the planets. And I was going to say it sounds is similar to astrology, just in the sense, of course, Venus is like what we love in the world, our connections, beauty, and Saturn tends to be structured, disciplined lessons. So that is just so neat, the crossover. I see everybody sharing their numbers here. Let me see if I can scroll up. So we got a few nines, another 7. Some people sharing their birth dates. So again, if you just add that up, you'll get your ruling number, your life path. And what is the significance of the life path? Like, what does that kind of point to? Is that our personality? Can it say something about how we create and manifest as well?
100%. So your ruling number or your life path number, it's kind of like the more dominant influence. And what I often find is every number contains a polarity. So both the challenge side and an opportunity side. And until we understand who we are and learn to embrace our gifts, sometimes we'll end up expressing more on the challenge side. And so for me, what that meant was the challenge side of 7 is excessively relying on outside opinions, needing somebody to tell me what to do, not trusting my own self, not trusting my own path, not trusting my own intuition, and disregarding some of my internal guidance systems. And the more I did that, the more stuck I would get. And that dynamic is to help me birth greater intuition, because the 7, being the boundary pusher and the disruptor in a lot of ways, it can push and disrupt and take risks and take leaps of faith because it's guided, right? So it doesn't feel so scary for a 7 when they have a deep, rich sense of inner trust. But if they don't have that inner trust, it will erode until they reach a trigger point that will help them learn to develop it. And so most of us, when we look at our life path number, we can see where some of the shadows might have been sort of driving the bus for a little while until we learn to like love, honor, embrace, and accept them, work with them, and then the stripes can kick in. So for example, with 5, like the ruling number 5, it is so beautiful and playful and fun and joyous. It loves change, right? It likes to change things up. It likes to switch things up, likes to travel, likes to explore. But the shadow of that is it can be ungrounded and it can be excessively changing and never letting anything integrate until it learns that it's here to change and shift, but to actually create some lasting change. And that idea of how discipline and structure are actually in honor of our truest freedom. And when we can find that balance of discipline and structure, we actually get more freedom available to us.
Totally. Oh, I love that. I'm such a 5, and I can see that throughout my life, just like loving to create and all of that. And I've had to learn to bring in like the structure and the discipline, especially in growing a business. Like we need some of that masculine energy. And sometimes I reframe it in my mind to like devotion, which really feels like a feminine quality too, like devote it to the things that move me forward, that get the results I want. But yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because when you see how numbers evolve, like the 5 is after the 4. And
Mm.
so oftentimes we think of the 4 as a very masculine type number. It's like 4 pillars, it's structured,
Right.
it's organized. And so the 5 comes next. So the 5 is like, it's going to do the different thing, right?
Right.
And then it's, well,
Right.
I don't want to just do the different thing. I want to do the different thing while integrating the strengths of what came before me. And so
Mm.
if you look at how numbers move over time. Every number, it's the same. Like from the 5 to the 6, like the 5 is so freedom focused, and the 6 is a bit more like harmonized, balance, like connection, family. And so
Mm.
the 6 is more like stable, whereas
Yep.
the 5 is like, woo!
Just wanting freedom and adventure. Totally. Just fun.
Yeah.
I love it. So, I actually think, because this may be helpful, I'm sure helpful for everybody too, that my personal year that I'm in is a 6. So, how can people calculate that? And what is the significance of like the personal year that we are in?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you have the best question. So, just to kind of give a little backstory, my understanding of numerology, the way I teach it and share it, is there's 3 ways you can use it. Way number one that we've already been talking about is like my code. This is me. This is my energy. This is how I move through life. Whatever. This is. I also think of it as like when you were born, you were chosen to activate a certain grid on the planet. So you being the 5 are here to activate that energy. Me being the 7, I'm here to activate that energy. And we're gridding this energy for the collective, right? But then we also go through cycles. And
Mm.
that's how energy moves through time and space. And that was what I would kind of categorize as forecasting. So I can understand like 2024, it's an 8 energy year, and this is what's going to
Mm.
unfold. And each month has its own energy as well. And it will tell me what patterns are unfolding. So there's universal patterns, just what I talked about, but then there's also personal patterns of like me, where I'm at. So if you know you're in a 6 personal year,
Mm.
my belief is that that's going to start on your birthday and move until your next birthday. Different numerologists have different ideas about that, but I believe it starts on your birthday. And what that means, the 6 is harmony and balance. We already talked about that a little bit, but the 6 is like homemaking, spending time with loved ones, harmonization of your space, art, beauty. It's got a lot of feminine, nurturing type qualities to it. It doesn't have to be for a woman, but it's got this like home base, cozy vibe. I say the 6 is like a blanket and hot chocolate, and it's like it just wants to like tuck you in. Um, the shadow of 6 is codependency.
Mm.
So the challenge of it is like people pleasing and creating balance and harmony at the expense of our own needs or desires. And so 6's ultimate life lesson is, how do I take care of what I need while
Mm.
still creating balance in the space around me? And how is that actually a better outcome than sacrificing?
Right. It sounds like the Libra energy in
Mm.
astrology, the balance, that balance of like relationships with our personal needs and wants. So, is there like a formulation where people can calculate their personal year and get a sense of like some of the themes that may be arising for them this year?
Totally. So it kicks in on your birthday. So you would want to add your month and your day
Mm.
plus the calendar year. So whatever your month and your day is plus 2024. So
Mm.
if you have a birthday in say January or the first half of February, then you would be in that year right now. Whereas if your birthday is in a few months' time, it would kind of kick in on your birthday, and so you'd still kind of be operating in like the 2023 personal year number. That's,
Okay.
again, there's different numerologists have different takes around that, but I really strongly believe that to align with personal energy, the day you were born is your new year, right? That is how your life began, and that is how your energy will cycle through your lifetime.
So, month, I'm going to write this in the
Yeah.
comments. I want
So
to check.
month, day plus 2024 or whatever the current year is.
Okay. Month plus day plus year. Awesome.
Hmm. Yeah.
Personal year for anyone interested, because I love that. And I find with all of these things, if we can take it and look at it more personally, like the cycles we are in, it's just so helpful in understanding what's unfolding in our life and where to give attention. And I'm sure so incredibly helpful when it comes to our business as well. And what to like focus on and kind of the themes. I would love to as well if you could share more about the 8 years, since we're just kind of getting into that energy, and what are the implications of that for business growth? Like, how can we work and harness that energy to elevate our business if that's a goal for people this year? And how does it connect with our intuition?
Yes. Okay. So there's a few pieces I want to tie into numerology and business. And like the first question you're asking me, it's around like, how do I use the forecast energy to plan my business? So I'm going to talk about that. But then the second piece is, how does understanding my client codes
Mm.
help my business? Right. So we can talk about that too. But the first piece is, 8 energy is about mastery.
Mm.
Mastery and devotion. I was going to say motion. It's like mastery and devotion, but then I'm like, actually, 8 is about motion too, because
Yeah.
it's about momentum, right?
Mm.
And it's like that infinity sign, right? Is momentum, it's flow. I often say it aligns with the law of compound interest. Um,
Mm.
this idea of that small actions built up over time will create an amplified outcome.
Okay.
Now, many people might not be, and tell me in the chat where you're at. Like, if have you felt that 2024 has felt that way so far?
Mm.
I think a lot of people have felt like a lot of grief, a
Mm.
lot of difficulty, kind of crunchy feelings.
Yeah.
And it's because January was a 9 energy month, right? So we
Mm.
started off 2024 with 9, which is about release, letting go, surrender. And as humans, anytime we have to let go of things, there is sadness and grief that come up, because it's like, well, I had
Mm.
hopes around that. I had dreams around that. I need to now, let go of what I thought things were going to be and maybe didn't, or maybe that dream needs to evolve to something new. I
Mm.
also had a lot of people tell me that old traumas that they thought were done kind of resurfaced in memories and dreams.
Yeah.
And again, it's this invitation to like transmute, to cleanse, to detox, because in
Mm.
February it's the one. But we've gone through, so November, December was 9-1, and then January, February was 9-1. So we've gone through a 9-1 cycle twice now. So
Wow.
for anybody who's like, I feel like I've been in the thick of it, like, valid, fully valid.
Yeah. Totally. I love that. And I think I've seen that theme coming up with so many clients. And I spoke about that even in my astrology videos as well, because we hear about like this is the year of momentum, big shift in astrology. It's like Pluto in Aquarius, a new cycle, a new era. And I think for those who are not feeling that, they can have a sense of pressure, or like, why am I having all these emotions or patterns from the past resurfacing? So I love how you described that. It's like each month has a unique energy that we're working through. And then the 8 is like the larger picture. And I think sometimes with energy too, it's like it takes a little bit to feel into it. It's not just like an instant shift. It's like we're moving into it. And it's so neat how the astrology as well of January showed a lot of the same things. Like we started with Pluto was wrapping up in Capricorn. So it was like, yeah, old patterns are going to emerge before this new era. And then we had Mercury still in post shadow retrograde. So overall themes of like revisiting past patterns, past cycles, so we can like fully move forward and embrace the energy for the year ahead.
Totally. Like, I keep getting this visual of like managing your like stock portfolio. Okay, I am not a stock trader, so this, just bear with me if you are, because this is an analogy I keep getting. But it's this idea of like, what are the sunk costs in your life? What are
Mm.
the things that you've already like maybe invested in, put time and energy in, but they're not giving you benefit anymore. They're not
Mm.
giving you a positive return anymore. And so it is that cleansing, detoxing, and releasing, because when you clear out that statement, now the stocks that you have left, or the stocks you're going to choose to buy and purchase and invest in, they can grow and they can allow your portfolio to grow. And so when we think of the 8, it's like, okay, we had a little cleansing, a little detox time. All right, we're in this one energy now. We're
Yeah.
getting some ideas. We're starting to think, well, how do I want to move forward? What are the ways I could proceed? Oh, I have this thought and that thought. That's where we're kind of, numerology speaking, sort of meant to be now, is just this like, I wonder what could be stage. And
Right.
then we'll start to plant seeds. And so
Mhm.
as we move into the year, we'll start to see more of the idea of flow. And it's just like, even when you think of the law of compound interest, the
Mhm.
first year or two that you save, $100 a month, it doesn't seem to amount to much. But
Mm.
then if you do it consistently over time, that's when you start to see your outcomes.
It builds the momentum. I love that. I love even your examples. I like with numbers, your love of numbers. So it's so fascinating. And I know you had shared with me as well when we were in your community doing a live stream when I was launching my Akashic certification, that you actually go into the records and you can get a sense of the energy around certain numbers. I would
Yes.
love to hear just anything you feel called to share on that, because of course that really stuck with me. I'm like, oh, this, like, what an amazing idea. Of course there's like a blueprint with each number.
Absolutely. And okay, like I love this so much, because one of my sort of beefs or criticisms of numerology is that people think there is like the meaning behind a number or an influence, and it's just not true, right? Certainly there is pieces of structure and guidelines. Like I will walk through with my clients, well, how do the numbers evolve? Like I start talking to you about going from the 4 to the 5 and what that looks like, and different positions have a certain meaning. But everybody's interpretation of the numbers comes through the lens of their code. So I'm telling you my understanding of the numbers through the lens of my code, just like a different numerologist is going to interpret through the lens of their code. And that's good. That's as we should do, because we're here to perceive life through our experiences, our lenses, the energies that we carry, and our loved ones, our clients, they desire that medicine from us. And
Mm-hmm.
so different numbers will show up differently for different people, not like completely out of left field differently, but they'll have different flavors to them. And when you understand how to feel the energy of the numbers, you don't need to memorize anything. You don't need to look up in a reference book. You can actually just close your eyes and say, have a conversation with the number, right? I was doing a live with my friend Karina the other day, and she's trained as a numerologist, and she's also just a skilled healer in so many ways. And she says that she actually sees the numbers as living, breathing beings now, and she full on has conversations with them, and that's how she sees them. You have other clients who've like turned them into art and things like that. But all that being said, like we could just do a little practice if you guys want to try. I think we
Oh
should
my goodness. Yeah, let us know in the comments. I want to.
Okay, so what I would invite you to do, maybe should we tap into 8, since it's an 8 energy year?
Like, I'm the 8 year, and I love the energy of 8. Okay, we'll do the exercise. I feel like I already feel the vibes of 8, and
Yeah.
I love it.
So if you're listening and you know how to open the records on your own, now is when you can feel free to just do your hand on the heart, do whatever process you need to do to open the records. If you don't know how to open records, that's totally fine. I encourage you, hand on the heart, hand on the belly is what I do. So let's take a few breaths together. I always take time to feel my feet on the ground, feel my hips or my seat resting on my chair, feel the energy that's supporting me. You might just sort of tap your hands on your leg for a minute, just to fully come back and land back into your being. Letting yourself take a few cleansing breaths. So we'll go in through the nose, out through the mouth. And with each exhale, you can sort of feel your feet connecting in deeply, feeling well supported, well grounded. Feeling all your energy recenter, realign back into your center. One more breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just really being aware of the sensations that you're noticing in your body, in your being. And whenever you're ready, I invite you to bring into your mind's eye the number 8. There's different ways you may imagine it. You may imagine drawing it on a chalkboard. You may imagine it projected on a movie screen. You may see it as a 3D image or a cartoon. Or you may just sense it's there. allowing yourself to just take a minute to receive how that image or sensation or knowingness shows up for you, just with noticing and awareness of where it lands. You might take a minute to scan through your body and see if it lands anywhere particular in your body, or if there's any sensations that are more noticeable. And as you're connecting in with the number 8, I invite you to ask it, what would you like to show me about my year ahead? I invite you to ask it, if you have a message for me, what would you like to tell me? If you would like me to know something, what is it that you would like me to be aware of? And as you're sitting in this space, receiving whatever bits and pieces you may be receiving, know that you can always ask questions of tell me more, or continue to feed this information to me as I go about my day. Send me whatever signs, signals, synchronicities you would like. Whenever you're ready, you can just take a moment and you can thank the number. Thank yourself for being willing and open to receive. And you can either just close the records or open your eyes. I'd love to hear how'd that go. Did you get messages?
So cool. Absolutely. I'd love to hear everyone in the comments what was coming up. And for me, like I said, I love the number 8 because I feel a sense of power with it. Like I definitely connected with this energy of like abundance, but for me, it feels really solid as well. Like it just feels solid. It feels grounded. It feels like speed and momentum, but not in a way that's chaotic. It's like flow. Like I could see the number 8 and I was like showing like this element of flow. It's like things are accelerating this year, but it can feel like it's pulling you forward in a good way. Like you're in flow with it. So that was cool, Megan. Thank you.
It's so cool because I got an image of an 8 that I've never had before, which is it looked like a Hot Wheels track and the car was just cruising around the Hot Wheels track. And I was like, that is so it, right?
I love that. I love that visual. I want to hear what everyone experienced because again, it's like we all see this through our own lens. So this isn't about it's right or it's wrong. It's like, how is this number presenting to you? How is it supporting your creations, your expansion this year? So
absolutely. And it's one of those things too, where it's like a practice. So the more you stop and you invite the numbers to talk to you, the more you'll hear what they have to say. And so if this is something that you want to explore, anytime you see a number pattern, like right now I see the number 33 on my screen. So I could just pause and I could say, what does 33 want me to know right now? And I could just take a second to ask it. And I think one of the traps that I want people to be aware of is if you see a number pattern like 33, you can certainly Google it, of course, but before you Google it, just ask it. It might tell you the message directly and you don't necessarily need Google.
Totally. I love that. Someone shared 8 was infinite abundance for me, give and receive. Oh, I love that flow. Yeah, that flow of energy. And yeah, I love where you said like tune in first and then Google. Because sometimes we like rely on these outside sources instead of like, hey, this is going to be unique for each of us and like to really sit with it. And I find when I do that, whether it's like with dreams or with angel numbers, and I have that connection with my intuition, my highest self first, and then I can seek out online if I want more clarity. But then I find I'm able to sort through it with greater ease. I'm like, oh, this resonates, this doesn't apply, instead of taking it all in because I have that foundation of like my intuition first is what's guiding me.
Absolutely. And I think that's my favorite sort of secret or tip to people who want to grow their intuition is give your intuition space to talk to you. If you want to grow it, you need to give it space in your life. So like you said, whether it's a dream, a number, anything, like being willing to take that 30 seconds or 60 seconds to just sit. And so
Mhm.
often we're so quick to outsource it. And I always see that as a way of like outsourcing our own authority or our own autonomy. It's like, if I need to rely on the textbook or Google, then that's like an element of putting my energy outside of myself. And not to say we can't consult with experts, of course we can, but I always want to at least start with, what is my heart, what is my soul, what is my intuition telling me? And then I'll co-create with an expert advisor. Sure. But first I want to see, like, where does my own authority sit on this? And generating that self-trust is also a piece. I think that the more you trust yourself, the easier it is to trust the message that spirit wants to give you, right?
Absolutely. Oh, I totally agree, Megan. Yeah. And I think it makes it way less confusing for people because if we're just outsourcing to who we see as an expert on the outside or to Google without first having that foundation, it gets very confusing because, of course, there's going to be like contradictory information and advice. And that's why we need to know, okay, what is my blueprint? Come back to that first and move from there. Yeah.
Well, and that just to me is it right there, because like
Mm.
if you want to learn numerology, let's say, and you choose to learn numerology from someone who's a 7 versus someone who's
Mhm.
a 4, they're
Yeah.
going to teach it different. Same if you want to learn about business, you're going to learn from someone who's different codes. They will
Mhm.
teach it differently. And that doesn't mean that either system is right or wrong. It's
Yeah.
just understanding your energetic makeup and understanding the style of who you're learning from is
Mhm.
going to some degree determine what you're able to implement,
Yeah.
right? Because as a 7, for example, in my business, if someone asks me to create something that's overly structured, I
Mhm.
just can't. It does not work for me. I struggle with it. Now,
Yeah.
some structure is going to benefit me no matter what, but
Mhm.
where I truly thrive is in the more spontaneous, go with the flow, fly by the seat of my pants type creations. And so I thrive in that. So I need to give myself space for that. And any structure I have should really be in support of that and should definitely
Mhm.
not limit that. And so understanding those bits about this kind of weaves it into your client now too, because if I know that about me
Yep.
and then I understand what my client codes are,
Mhm.
I can give them the guidance that actually fits with their code, right? And so then their ability to integrate it and to take action and to get results is going to be so much higher if the guidance I'm giving them makes sense for the way energy runs in their body.
Mm. I love that. And I love that shift in business. Like I really see it going in that direction for, coaches and healers, like a deeper understanding of creating strategy and systems and offers and just basically building our business based on our blueprint because that's what is going to make it sustainable. So numerology is such a beautiful way to understand what that blueprint is and create a structure of business that supports that instead of trying to fit into a box that doesn't belong to you. Like I see so many different strategies, people sharing different things, and like I know it can work, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for me. And I learned that lesson a long time ago that if it doesn't resonate, it's not aligned with my path or my magic or my zone of genius, it's not going to be for me, no matter how incredible it performed for them. Like, yeah, right.
That's a good lesson.
We all have our own. So I want to read over some of these comments as well, just to, yeah, I'm so curious. So we have the infinite abundance of give and receive, solid, secure, abundant. My 8 looks solid, white, 3D, moving, turning slowly, emanating power and calm. Oh, I love that. And yeah, I can't see the name. I'd have to log into my phone, but it sounds like you're a very visual person, which I love, like a gift of, yeah, clairvoyance to really see the numbers in that way. It was a small 8, and then it stretched throughout my whole body in a dark purple. And then I saw 1234 on my screen. Ooh,
I
interesting.
always see consecutive numbers that start with like 1, 2, 3 something. I
Yeah.
always see that as like lift off. So to me, what
Oh,
that is like the 8 is like it's go time. Like whatever the thing is that you have in your heart, in your mind right now, like 1, 2, 3, let's go.
time. I love that. And I also want to share, Megan, I know we could talk for so long, and there are some other questions, but you have an upcoming mini series you're hosting too. So I want to share the link on that if you want to share a little bit more. And then if anyone else has questions, we can go into that too. But I'll grab the link here and let you share more for anyone that's like, this is so fascinating. I want to learn more about numerology.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a series coming up next week, starting on the um, 21st of what day is it starting on? The 21st, starting on Tuesday next week, and it's called Alchemy Codes. And what we're really going to be diving into in Alchemy Codes is understanding the shadow and the opportunity or the gift associated with the numbers, and learning how working with this energy is actually a way of you to create alchemy, to create transmutation, to actually like birth opportunities. And so often I find, especially when we've been going through struggle or difficult time, you know, facing those challenges is hard, and we want them to go away. Like we want to push away, we want them to disappear. And what I teach in Alchemy Codes is really how to work with the energy to strengthen your gift. And we're going to actually create an alchemy mantra that'll be based on your ruling number, and you'll be able to create that to work with that as you go forward and create alchemy with the challenges you're experiencing.
Beautiful. Oh, your own alchemy code. Oh my goodness. I love that. So the link is in the comments. This is going to be fascinating. Like Megan just shares this in such an incredible way that's very tangible. So I think we're both alike in that way. Megan, like we work with these energies, but we really want to help people like ground it in ways where they can implement in their day-to-day life, whether that's with our intuition or seeing growth in business. And yeah, is there, because I know we titled this like Enhance Intuition, Grow Your Business, and then we just started talking.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share around working with numerology and how it relates to like fine tuning our intuition? And do you find like based on our code, like our coding, our numerology coding, that
Mm.
we can see different intuitive gifts, like do different life paths also maybe use or work with their intuition in different ways?
100%. We all, with different numbers, will use intuition differently. So my belief is it doesn't matter what code you absolutely are intuitive, and it's a gift that some people know the day they're born, and some people earn it the hard way. I kind of feel like I earned it the hard way, but everybody is going to come, to make friends with their intuition in their own way.
Mhm.
And the only, thing that you need to have is the desire. If you have the desire to be intuitive, you 100% have it. The thing I notice with different numbers is some numbers are very physical, very earth-based numbers. So it tends to be that their intuition will be something that requires something very grounded, very tangible. It might require movement or the body, right? Some are a lot more emotional based. And so they will be more of the like empath, felt sense, feeling emotions, sensing stuff that is more of that like clairsentient type feeling. And then some are more of the mental. So then it might be the claircognizant. It might just be like a sense of knowing. And they're going to have like to access their intuition. It's going to be more around like making sense of things, understanding things, like using that mental capacity. And so when you understand where your codes lie, you can sort of see, well, how do I, pull this through in practices and habits and rituals and routines to get my, flow going. And obviously all of us will benefit from bringing in some of all the elements, but you kind of figure out your go-tos, right? And so as a ruling number 7, that's a very physical number. For me, one of the most important things is getting out in nature, hiking, spending time with trees, having crystals nearby, like earth elements is really important. But then I also have a full emotional plane. So that felt sense is also very important. And how I've discovered for me it works really well is having people where I can discuss and reflect with, whether it's a bestie or even a client, like someone where I can talk things through. The more I can feel the intuition coming through conversation, the louder and brighter it gets. And so you can sort of get a sense of that through your numbers, which I think is really helpful. And then to the other point of your question, I would say like when you're working with a client and you want to be bringing more clients in, I feel like having a chart can be because here's the thing, like if you're working with things like the Akashic Records, numerology, astrology, any kind of stuff, it can feel so etheric to people, right? And they can be like, what? Like, I want to get it, but I don't. And so I think sometimes having a chart that's like, and I mean, obviously you have this in astrology too, but having a chart where it's like, here's what I see. The numbers show me this. This is the path I would recommend for the outcome that you desire or for the reason you've hired me, because I see X, Y, and Z in your chart. And so I find that understanding basic numerology is actually really helpful in those discovery calls when
Mhm.
you're positioning multi-client sessions or a package or a program with someone to get them to understand, like, this is how my energy works, this is how your program works, and like this is how they're going to come together.
I love that, like, having that visual blueprint that people can see. That is so fascinating and so helpful because, again, it's not that, like, strategies and systems aren't part of business, they are. Well, we're here in the physical, but basing that off of your blueprint is going to be what makes that sustainable and more enjoyable and where you're operating, like, your zone of genius, your intuitive gifts, so I love that.
The
So
other thing I think is so funny too is it's so much easier to reach a level of acceptance. I don't know if you've noticed this when you are doing people's astrology, but if I see an influence in someone's chart that's a
Mhm.
sabotage or that they're using as a sabotage,
Yep.
if I point it out in a way of like, hey, I see this influence in your chart. Has this ever impacted you?
Mhm.
It's a much more like kind and loving and empowering way for them to choose for themselves. You know what? You're right. I do that. Or no, that doesn't apply to me
Mhm.
versus me saying to them, oh, you do this. Do you know what I mean?
I yes, 100% get it, and kinda going back to what you were describing earlier around each number has, like, a lower and higher octave expression and can look completely almost like it's the same energy, but, like, manifesting differently if you're in a lower or higher octave expression. It's the same with astrology and the energy, like, every zodiac sign has a higher and lower octave expression, and we tend to, like, flow through both, like you had explained too, usually earlier on, we're in maybe more the challenging aspects of it, but then over time we're operating more in like the highest octave, the highest expression of that energy, and that can look completely differently. And I bet that's with numerology too. When you see someone's chart, like somebody who is operating the highest octave of all of that energy would present so much different than somebody in the lower octave expression. Like I see that all the time with astrology charts.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes is why you'll do charts for people and they'll be like, oh, I don't know. I don't resonate with that at all. It's like, well, have we been denying our gifts for some time? Because that might be part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't always know like the magic that's there that we can step into. True. And I think, yeah, numerology is such a beautiful way to explore that. So thank you for sharing this today, Megan. This has been amazing. I definitely encourage everyone to join Alchemy Codes if this is resonating with you. And again, like I just think there's so many beautiful ways we can explore our blueprint. And the more we do that, the more we're going to live in alignment with our highest path. So numerology is such an incredible way to do that. So definitely check that out. And is there anything you'd like to share, Megan, before we wrap up for today? And thank you again.
I just want to say thank you for hosting me here. And thank you, all the listeners, all of you guys, for sharing and commenting and asking questions and doing the little, feeling the number exercise with me. I always just find that so fulfilling. So thank you.
Oh, that number exercise was so powerful. And yeah, like one one last thing I want to say around that, because I thought that was so powerful. I'm like, we can really use that as a tool in our business as well. I'm like, ooh, really feeling into like this is like a download I'm receiving that I'm sure is going to be helpful for everyone. Like if there is an income goal you're working toward, like feeling the essence of that, the energy of that, and what it's calling you toward. Because usually if we're working towards something, that means we're not there yet. And there's certain traits or energies or habits we're invited to lean into in order to manifest it. So I think this is such a helpful practice for anyone that's wanting to maybe even have a certain number in your savings account or investments. Like you could have this as a practice.
I love that. I had a mentor who would call that your warrior line. That
Ooh.
number in your savings account or your investments that made you feel like a warrior. I'm like, oh, I love that.
Warrior line. Oh, I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Megan, for being here and sharing your magic. This was a lot of fun. And thank you, goddesses, for joining. If you're on the replay, leave questions, comments. We'll be circling back. All right, everyone. Bye for now.